Hey everyone, and welcome to the Americana Station podcast. I am your host, Will Payne Harrison, and today on the podcast, I have Adeem the Artist. I'm excited to have them on, and we got into a lot of good conversation. They have a new record out called Cast Iron Pansexual, which is incredible, and you'll probably hear one of the songs here before I introduce them. And it's really exciting. They're actually playing today with Mary Gauthier, Jamie Harris, and Chris Matthews for Taking Flight #1. It'll be live on YouTube Live with Country Queer. So make sure that you check that out. Adeem's awesome, and I definitely look forward to seeing them live here soon, hopefully. But they have a new record out. They're going to be doing, at some point in Knoxville, they'll be doing a record release. We talk about all of that. What else is going on? Well, in the world of Will Payne Harrison, I'm working on my new record, and I have one more track to finish. I haven't announced it yet. I'll make sure that this is the first place that I announce it, but I am working on a cover of a dear friend that I'll be putting on the record. And that's the last track I need to record bass on. And it's always interesting recording on, or recording a song that you didn't write, because I find I always end up spending a lot more time on it because you want to get it right. And it's not necessarily the way that you just fall into the rhythm of, finger picking or strumming or playing bass, or even like the chord progressions and the amount of time and the phrasing and things like that. It's all a little different. So I've had to spend a little bit more time on the cover, but I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to announce who it is and what song. That'll be exciting. What else is going on? I'm playing at Sawstone Brewery in Kentucky this Friday, and that'll be my first gig since Eddie Owen Presents last year in July. So it's been almost a year since I performed live, and I'm kind of brushing up, trying to remember all the lyrics to my songs and the covers that I'm going to be doing. But if you're in the Kentucky area, right outside of Lexington, in Morstead, I believe is the name of the town, you should come out. Come check out my first gig. Watch me brush all the cobwebs off and maybe halfway do a good job. I promise not to drink too much beer so that I can remember the words. But I'm excited to be back out there and performing. And kind of been focusing on the new record, so haven't really been looking to gig as of yet, but it's definitely on the horizon. It's on my mind, so I'm excited about that. We have so many great guests coming up on the podcast. Let's see. Shay Martin Lovett is going to be next. We've got Tall Paul, and Corby Lenker will also be. I just booked him on the podcast, and there's a couple more that I'm working with some publicists I'm kind of on pause right now just to catch up on all these podcasts that I have to get out, but I do have some that once I book, I will announce that I'm excited about as well. So it's going to be a great summer for podcasting, new music, and the world is healing and getting better, and things are starting to look up. I'm excited about all that. So let's talk about Adeem the Artist and their new album, Cast Iron Pansexual. Here we go.
I was only 5 years old when your song came out. I heard you should have been a cowboy on the radio.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Adeem the Artist. Welcome, and thank you so much for being on.
Heck yeah, thanks for having me.
So how have things been going for your new album? You have Cast Iron Pansexual has been out for 2 months now, is that correct?
Yeah, that's weird to think about because it feels like there was so much time thinking about anxiously it coming out. But yeah, it's been out for 2 months now.
And how's the reception been for the record so far?
Good. I mean, nobody's tried to burn my house down or anything, so that's been nice.
That's always a plus.
And generally, the response has been really favorable. I mean, I almost didn't release it as recently as February. I was like, I don't know if I'll put this out or not. So the fact that it's been so well received has been really cool and surprising to me.
What was maybe the opposition to releasing the record? Timing or?
I would say I just didn't know if it mattered to anybody. I had some anxiety about like dogpiling on Toby Keith for a lot of reasons, but then also it just like, I don't know, it's like full of me processing like really personal stuff that I didn't know if anybody would relate with. So it was more like I just really wasn't sure if there was even any interest in the greater sphere for something like what I was doing.
Have you found people that have been able to relate to it and have like reached out to you in that regards?
Yeah. It seems like it resonated with a lot of people. I think it's Henry Nouwen that says the things that are most personal are the most universal. And I had really taken to disliking that sort of painting the human experience as a monolith, but it has been sort of validated by this experience.
Yeah, it's always validating too, because it does seem so, deep and personal. But even, if there's specifics in the song, so everyone can always relate to something, in that sort of realm. But yeah, it's so you were born, you're a 7th generation Carolinian. Is that North or South?
It's both.
It's both.
Yeah, family talk us back and forth between the Carolinas. But I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my dad was born in South Carolina. My granddad was born in North Carolina. It's kind of and we switch our names back and forth every 3 grandfathers. The last name goes from Bingham to Bigham, and then back to Bingham, back to Bigham. I don't know why. Peculiar.
So being from the South your whole life, and I guess kind of dealing with, we were talking about before we got started, being kind of enforced of like, there are boys and there are girls. Like, how did unpacking this whole discovering yourself, how did that work, and how did being a child of the South affect that process?
Yeah. Well, I met my first trans friend probably like 6 or 7 years ago. The first person I knew who was like openly trans and like opened up to me about it. And that was like right after like Laura Jane Grace had came out. So I was like kind of starting to be, I don't know, interested in it as like a thing that was happening in the world that I didn't really know a lot about prior. I would say, I don't know, from a personal standpoint, I think I always felt like I was not measuring up to what it meant to be like a boy or a man, like the societal construct of what that looks like. I think my dad was definitely trying to help shape me into like his idea of what that looks like along the way. But I've been conscious of the fact that I don't really identify with the gender binary for a few years. And then last year there was there's this trans activist named Alok, who is, I don't think they're on Twitter, but they're on Instagram and Facebook. And I have some non-binary friends who are sharing posts from this model / activist. And Alok is this like Indian person with like a lot of body hair and like a big beard and like really like colorful and vibrant makeup and like really vibrant clothes that are like very form-fitting and very like over the top and extravagant. And I remember the first time I saw a photo of them, it was shared by my friend, and like my gut response was like, they would be so beautiful if they would shave. You know, like it's so weird to me that they're not just like living into this femininity. And then I started reading the comments because I was just like intrigued, because I think that my reaction was very much like, this is unattractive. Like they are an attractive person doing an unattractive thing. And I am not the type of person who would have ever like put that in a comment or anything. Right. You know, that was just internal response. And they kept sharing like stuff they were doing, like photos that they would post. And so I, like over the course of a couple of weeks, I just was really starting to like hone in on that response in myself. Like, this is happening every time I see these photos. Like I'm having a really visceral response to this that's like interesting to me, because I don't know that I agree with that. Almost like, you know, if you see, when I was younger, that was like, I would see larger bodies and think like, if they would just lose weight, they would be attractive, versus kind of going through the work of like, well, all bodies are beautiful.
Right.
And this was that same thing kind of coming up for me again. And I think realizing the response I was having to this other person helped me really hone in on like, oh, that's like a trained response that I'm having for myself. Like that's like barriers that I've built over like what I think masculinity and femininity is. That's like what I think being a man versus being a woman is.
Right.
And some of the ways that like, you know, I got into like construction work, probably a few years ago. Like I wanted to quit my job and do music. I had like a corporate job. So I quit the corporate job and I was like doing construction work and doing, you know, odd jobs and things like that. And that was like a heavy dose of like sometimes like really toxic masculinity. And I think during that time, it was like, I started wearing manhood like drag, you know?
Yeah.
And so really
just to survive, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And so processing through that like those definitions inside of me that were telling me like, this is what you're supposed to be, and this is what this looks like, and this is what this looks like, was really helpful. And then just I think this is true for everybody, but just the pandemic, like, I don't know, you have no reason to play the performative roles that you have to play to like navigate society anymore, you know, because you're not out there. Right. You know, and that's true for everybody. That's not just as it applies to gender issues or sexuality issues or anything else. That's just like the fucking fake laugh you have to do. So, I don't know if I can swear on this. Sorry.
Yeah, you can. You're fine.
The fake laugh you do at the water fountain with the guy that you don't really like but thinks you're buddies. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to like maintain this like superficial relationship. And so that was like a lot of what I was kind of going through, was just like, I no longer had to show up in the way that I was expected to show up. And that kind of freed me to really re-examine like, well, how do I want to present? How do I want to be interpreted? How, you know, like just on a base level.
So this was more like the pandemic sort of freed you from that, or is it more recent like that in the last year, or that was just when you kind of mentally were free, but you were already like working on who you were?
Yeah, I would say the pandemic played a big role, because the Alok moment happened for me just at the start of the pandemic. So that was a lot of like, and then I started writing these songs, kind of processing my sexuality, which like I've been like out to myself and like immediate people for 10 years now, but that's not something that I ever like announced really. I never was like, and guess what, you guys?
Right.
And so there's a song on the album about like never having came out. And that was like kind of the first one I think that I wrote of this collection, when I was starting to process my sexuality. And in doing that, just came into a lot of the same like issues. Like, I don't want to tell people that I'm non-binary, because like, I don't want to take space that should be reserved for like real non-binary people. I don't know how to explain it better than that. It sounds a bit daft, I guess, but there was a lot of
what makes you a real non-binary person, like comparatively?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
like
I mean,
someone else. I mean,
Well, that's the othering that happens, right? I mean, I think it was easier for me to define with sexuality because I was married to a woman, and presenting as a man. And so it was very like, I don't know, to put myself out there and to say like I'm pansexual seems very much like, I don't know, like I'm trying to ride a brand or something that I don't deserve to ride in some way. Like there are people who are like,
you
like
were afraid
more,
of reception. Is that kind of what
no,
you mean? Or
I guess what I mean is like the idea of like coming out is such a like important moment for so many people. And I also think that like it's a really vulnerable moment for so many people. And I think like I remember when I came out to my mom, that was probably 2012, and she was like, "It's just a phase. Like it's not a big deal. Like you'll get over it." She was like very sweet, but that was her take. And then I married a woman, and that felt very self-sabotaging. Like I'd fulfilled my mom's prophecy in some way.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Like my sexuality didn't change because I married a woman. But I think that like by being in a cishet relationship for so long, it felt very much like I had a sort of safety, that I was insulated from a sort of criticism. And if I told people I was queer, it just seemed to them very much like, okay, well, Adeem's trying to fuck dudes now, I guess. Or it seems like Adeem's trying to get attention. I have an obsession with like the way other people interpret everything that happens regarding me and around me all the time. So that this is wrapped up in all of that. But I think that was it. I think it was the fear of seeming like I was taking up room that should be reserved from people who like have more risk involved in coming out. And then with non-binary, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, I don't know, like, I don't want to be a woman. It's not like I woke up one day and was like, I'm in the wrong body. Like, I don't think I ever felt that. And I don't identify with that. And a lot of people do. A lot of people feel that really strongly. Dysphoria is like a pretty common thing. So for me, it was like, I just wanted to have the freedom to express my gender in like all these different ways. And sometimes that means like, wearing work boots and like dressing very masculine and like, sometimes it means wearing a dress and wearing makeup and like feeling really pretty and presenting in that way. And so I didn't know yet that you didn't have to like pick a side, I guess, in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? So I think for me, it felt like, well, maybe I'm just like, I don't know, but ultimately, I think it has a lot to do with like in the same way that when I was a kid, like, and there were like gay kids in my high school, I thought those kids were like born, like knowing they were gay and fully confident in that. And I like was not like that at all. Like I had been told from like a very young age that being gay was like a really horrible thing to do. So of course there was no space for me to even entertain that was like a part of my attraction and my, in myself. And so I think that it was a similar thing that was happening where I was just othering people a lot in my mind. And so it was like, well, I can't relate to like the trans experience. And because I was so heavily centered on like not relating with that experience, I wasn't allowing myself to just like accept like, this is just one of those experiences that I'm having,
So with the songwriting previous to that, was it not as like, I guess, open to the whole pansexual experience? Was this album like the first time that you like really allowed yourself to explore these topics, or had you explored them before and maybe just not put them out?
Well, Apartment was written in 2011 and just kind of reworked for the album. So there are a couple on here that are older that were never released. And then there was a song called Midway Motel that I wrote a few years ago that talks about kissing a boy growing up. I was trying to turn a corner on country themes, but yeah. So I don't think it's something that I like refused to address necessarily, but like this was very this very much became like a coming out sort of album.
Right. Yeah. And have you always done like the more like country route, or is this something that you've explored in the last few albums as well? I honestly I didn't dive into your back catalog too much. I've just been listening to the new record the most.
No, that's fine. I moved to New York when I was 12 years old, and did a lot of work to like get rid of my accent and sort of distance myself from being from the South. So when I moved to Knoxville, that was 11 years ago, I was like billing myself as like a New York indie folk artist. Like that was kind of my brand that I was pushing at the time. And the Mountain Goats are one of my favorite bands. I really like David Bazan and John Vanderslice. So that was kind of very much where I was centered around. And then in 2015 or 2016, I found this Roger Allen Wade album. I don't know if you're familiar with Roger Allen Wade.
I'm not. Tell me about him.
Really, really great. But he had this album called Southbound Train that's just gorgeous from front to back. And it was like really, really crucial for me in beginning to see like the marriage of poetry and like the rural South in a way that I had never been exposed to before. Cause like I knew 90s country bops, but especially in the post 9/11, like, world of country music, I felt very estranged and disconnected from all of that. And it felt like kind of a parody of itself. So to find an entry point back into like kind of my childhood and like my folks was like really, really nice. And then, branching out of there, discovered John Prine and Guy Clark and James McMurtry. And that was kind of when my writing began to really center around like embracing being in and of the South and not trying to like distance myself from it and pretend like it didn't happen.
Right.
So I think I released an album called Kyle Adeem is Dead. Before that album, I was releasing music as Kyle Adeem, and had been doing shows for a long time under that moniker. And so when I released Kyle Adeem is Dead, that was kind of the first like pretty staunchly Americana record. Like my writing definitely was leaning in that direction, and that's kind of where I was.
Were you like influenced by like the bluegrass and country music from like the Carolinas and East Tennessee?
Yeah, some. I mean, I think as a kid, I was mostly listening to just like national country radio. And then by the time I left, I was getting really into Eminem and leaving,
right,
leaving that world behind. But I when I first started playing was in New York, and that was in around 2004, 2005. And I would go to the public library in my town up there that I lived, and I would like listen to all these Appalachian pickers, and they play like a lot of like finger picking takes on John Prine tunes and stuff. I didn't know. I started listening to John Prine, and then I recognized like so many of his catalog because of this. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of my early folk and country music started coming in. Bluegrass, I really experienced peripherally living in Knoxville and going around to a lot of the folk festivals around town and stuff.
Yeah. So on your record, where did you record it in Knoxville, and like who were some of the people that were on the record with you?
Yeah. Well, it's all me.
Oh wow.
I did the recording, and I did all the instrumentation. Yeah.
Kudos. Did you do the producing and everything?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Wow.
It was
I mean, it's a great sounding record. I it sounds like, a lot of people were on the album, so that's really cool that was
thanks.
all you.
That's really high praise. I appreciate that. That's the thing I think I feel most nervous about is it sounding like shit. So
Totally. Yeah, because it's all you, so it all rides on you. So if it sounds like shit, there's no one else to blame.
Yeah. And your ears are just tuned the way they're tuned. So it's like at some point even if it sounds good to you, you know, you can't know until it's out in the world what people are going to think about it.
So did you do the thing that I've had a lot of guests on the program do this, where you just bought a bunch of gear and like kind of learned it on your own, or had you already built up a studio previous to the
Yeah, I did it previous to the pandemic. I did in 2016, I did a Kickstarter, and I kickstarted 4 CDs about birds. And I did 2. I bought a bunch of studio gear, and I did 2 of the bird CDs. And then my kid was born, and the other 2 were still kind of just like waiting. They've been written and they've been in pre-production for like ever. Those are the ones that Joseph Biden just removed from the Spotify. So it's been a rough go, but that's a inside social media joke, I guess.
I was trying to figure out what that was, by the way. Right before we started this podcast, I saw some of those tweets and I was like, wait, Joe Biden removed.
Yeah. So
yeah. Can you explain that? So I don't have to look it up.
Oh man. So basically, yeah, I learned recording stuff. I mean, I'm still learning, right? That's like what it is. You just don't stop.
Forever student. Yeah.
And I started learning in 2016 when I started doing the bird EPs, and they get progressively better. Actually, I opened up the session files the other day and I was like, what the fuck? I mean, it's just a disaster. There's like 40 like inputs on every single track. It's just ridiculous. How many reverbs do I need on the vocals?
Yeah, I've been there. And then you put like the compression on each track instead of bussing it and just stupid stuff like that.
Exactly. No buses on this. It crashed my computer to open the file.
Right. Exactly.
This is ridiculous. So, so I kind of learned on those. And then, this year, the Cast Iron Pansexual album, like, sounded great, was received really great. And I just kind of was like, I'm going to take some of these older CDs that don't sound very good off of here.
Okay.
Just like, I'm just going to like kind of make this my turning point where things that don't live up to the threshold can kind of go live on Bandcamp in the vault. And so I made that decision, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make it fun. I'm gonna pretend like the president is making me do it. And so I made a tweet in February or March, and I was like, guess what, everybody? I just found out that Joe Biden is removing the Flamingo from all streaming services. And it got like no traction. Like nobody really responded to it or anything. And then I deleted it. Obviously, I was like, well, okay, that's done. And then in April, I thought, well, I'll make it funnier this time. I'll mock up a letter from Joe Biden. And so I went in like Photoshop and I like just doctored a letter that I found from Joe Biden. And the letter is stupid. I mean, it's so stupid. It's like, Adeem, we don't really do stuff like this. So it's pretty serious. There's just so many like, obviously like I made this up moments in the letter. And then I posted it and people like freaked out. And about an hour in, I was like, oh shit. Like a lot of people believe that this is actually happening, That's
perfect. That's what you want.
It was maybe I was like very anxious about it. And so when it started that way, I was just like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing now. I guess I'm just going to milk this for as long as I can. And so then I was just like, people kept saying like, I'm not sure if this is real or not, but if it's real, it's crazy. And I would just respond and say, he signed it. Because I was using like a doctored letter that I found on the internet. I Googled like letter from Joe Biden. And so I did that. And then near the end of the day, like a bunch of people started swooping in like, don't let them fool you. Like, this isn't real. Adeem never got a letter from Joe Biden. Like, they're trying to trick you. And that's when I got mad because I was like, if I was trying to trick people, I would have done a better job.
Yeah.
Like I am being a jackass and doing art and comedy. Like I am not trying to like pull the wool over people's eyes.
Right.
Like the people that are trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes are the people who are convincing your like uncle that Dr. Seuss is being censored by the government. Those are the people, like the news sites that are doing the shit that I'm doing, but they're doing it well. those are the people you should be mad at, not me.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that like we're in such an insane part of history that like satire like that is taken seriously.
Yeah. Well, and now, I did the same. I'm doing the same thing again today. I'm playing with the same energy. But yeah, it's really strange. I had to release a video where I explained all the points in the letter where I tried to make people realize it wasn't real. Because at the end of the day, it is like, I would like people to understand that they have to like view this shit more critically. Right. It's mostly Facebook. Between the 3 social media platforms that I'm using for this stuff, Facebook is the one that erupts the most, where people are like real quick to be like, this is bullshit. We've got to do something. We'll write letters to Joe Biden. And it's like, you need to fucking calm down. Joe Biden would never write me a letter, even if this were happening. Like, what is wrong with you?
But imagine if you got on like the Knoxville News.
Like, they reached out to me.
Artist. Yeah. Wait, are you serious?
The News Sentinel reached out to me and asked me what the situation was. And
that's hilarious.
And I was just like, I don't know. I can't really talk about it right now. Cause I was like, I don't even know how to handle this. Cause a part of me was like, maybe I should milk this. Maybe I should see how far, like maybe this can be an experiment in seeing how far you can take a totally fabricated news story before
like
it
Andy
like
Kaufman
gets
style.
flagged. Yeah. Yeah. Kaufman's one of my biggest heroes. So it informs a lot of my shenanigans. But yeah, I did another one, like a couple days later. It was like a new letter by Joseph Biden. And this one had like just ridiculous hokey font. It was like really silly. And, it was just full of like criticisms of Joe Biden. Like, I think I made him say, I don't have time to help you with your social media jokes because I'm too busy workshopping, how to spin my marketing plan of separating families at the border so that it seems like a good thing now that I'm president, something like that. You know what I mean? And people were like, I can't believe this is happening to you still. And I was like, what do I have to do?
You should have misspelled some of the words.
I did.
Oh, you did?
It was just obscene. And so then I was just kind of like, I don't know, there's no hope. Like people just, I think I've had a month to like really think about it. And I think that there's so much, like, I think everyone is just in a fucking trauma response, like all the time. I think so many people live in fight or flight right now. And it's like, you can't think fully. Like you don't have all of your capacity to like reason and use critical thinking when you're always like feeling like you're in danger. And that's how so many people feel and have felt for the past few years, you know?
Has it increased your Spotify plays though? Are people like, now I'm going to listen to your new music. He can't take that off.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the Spotify plays have gone up, but this is in conjunction with so many other attempts to make my Spotify plays go up. It's tough to say what's working and what's not. That was the worst take, though. A bunch of people were like, Adeem's just trying to make us buy this CD. CD's not even for sale. You can't even buy it. I have no motive.
So you don't have physical copies of it? It's just on streaming platforms?
Cast Iron. Yeah, Cast Iron is... I'm doing a proper CD release show coming up that I have yet to announce. Well, I've announced it now.
Have you been working from home and trying to improve your home studio? I want to talk to you today about soundproofyourstudio.com. They help create your dream home studio. I know with COVID, it's hard to get out and go to a regular studio, and a lot of us have been building up our home studios. And if you sign up, they give you a free soundproofing course, and you get 10 secrets to pro recordings and mixes. Not only that, but I was also sent a studio build checklist for signing up. So make sure you go to soundproofyourstudio.com. That's soundproofyourstudio.com today. Are you a fan of Americana music and you want to hear the latest and greatest reviews and opinions on the up-and-coming artists in the scene? Well, then you need to visit americanahighways.org. That's americanahighways.org for reviews like Crown Over by yours truly and playlists like the Backroads playlist by yours truly. There's lots of great reviews on there, and you should check it out, americanahighways.org. And now back to the interview.
Celebrating war with eagles and
Awesome. Are you putting it on vinyl as well? or just CD for now?
Yeah, just CD for now. I have aspirations of putting it on vinyl. It's just so expensive.
So expensive. Yeah.
And it's like in my mind, I'm like, this is a lot of money to spend for like 15 dads who love IPAs to be really excited.
I mean, but the thing is that some people will buy it just because it's so niche too, you know, like even if they don't have a record player, they'll buy it, you know.
It's true.
So I don't know. There's something about like, I mean, I do have a record player, but there's something about like paying $20 for like a vinyl versus paying like $10 for a CD. You're like, meh, CD, you know, but
right.
So I definitely think that at some point, my next record I'll put on vinyl and try it out and see if it works. But you're right. It's like, I mean, the lowest amount you can get currently is what, like 200 copies for like at least $2,000, you know? So they're at least 10 a piece up front that you got to pay for. It's so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. The break even point is like pretty high. Yeah, I don't know. There are smaller companies that do like lower runs. So I've thought about doing it as like a Patreon tier or something. Cause there's like if somebody's giving you like $20 a month, then that's a lot more money for a vinyl record every year.
But yeah, you got to sell like 100 just to break even, you know?
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. It is wild. And the way that touring is going right now, it's like,
right.
Yeesh.
Yeah. It's right now, like even if you think about like selling them online, now you've got to get the packaging. You've got to make sure that it's, you know, like first class, like, and hope that it gets there without getting warped or broken.
Right.
So I mean, in that case, you know, that's like, you know, you got to charge $30 if you mail it to make sure that you get your cost.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah,
Oof.
Well,
talking shop.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully you do eventually get records, because I would love to have one if you did. I'd be one of those 15 IPA loving dads.
I will definitely do them at some point. The question is whether or not it's by the end of the year or next year.
Yeah. Okay. I got a couple of Twitter questions for you. First is at Find Me Reading, and they ask, I'm very curious about the process of putting together the buried treasure lists, which I absolutely love. How do they go about finding artists and deciding which ones to feature?
Oh yeah. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with my album, so I'm not interested in answering it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the buried treasure. Thank you for reading it. That's amazing. I have, first of all, a bunch of submissions. Like, people have sent us tons of submissions. And when I first started on doing the column, I already had a bunch of music to kind of sift through. I do lean towards quirkier things that are less like securely country and more like building blocks. I'm really excited about the idea of advancing country music into new spaces.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of my curation of buried treasure. I'll look certain terms up on Twitter, trying to find people. And then my Spotify will recommend things to me sometimes. And then obviously publicists launch stuff at me a lot. So that's it. I really like, it's been harder lately because I have less in my bank to center diversity in that. In the beginning, it was much easier because I had such a huge wealth of people kind of waiting for coverage to be like, okay, these are the marks that I want to hit to make sure that like we're really spreading out our representation in these. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening to the Buried Treasure. I have found some of my favorite artists on there. Dorje, the singing shaman, is a personal hero of mine. And
I'm glad you mentioned her. I actually, I don't know if I found her through you or not, but her new record is really good.
Oh, it's really incredible.
Yeah, actually, so I have the and I featured you on it too, but I have the Americana Highways Backroads playlist, and
yeah, thank you for that, by the way.
yeah, no problem. And I had George A on there as well, and I'm not sure, you probably, honestly, it was probably you that had like tweeted something about her, and I listened to it and it was great, so I put it on the playlist as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, she's like, I don't know, you hear her for the first time, and it's like, okay, I'm a fan.
Yeah. Her voice is just incredible too.
It's funny. She's like, it seems like that's the thing she's most insecure about as an artist. And it's so funny to me because she's just like an amazing singer.
Well, I'd seen a couple of tweets that she had posted where, you know, she said, you know, I want to sing, I'm doing country music. And then people were like, you should do, what did they say? Like some other genre.
Yeah.
Like gospel or something.
Or soul
or something that's I guess a little bit more black oriented. And she was like, what, right. Just because I'm black, it's like I can still sing country music. I saw those tweets and I was like, that's super awesome, because I definitely do see that a lot especially in the country world, where they're like, it's like the twang in your or like the way that you sing doesn't necessarily make you a country artist or not, you know. There's tons of awful singers
Keith
in country.
Urban is like one of the biggest country artists.
Yeah,
he's like
exactly.
From Australia.
Exactly. And he doesn't hide his Australian accent, you know?
Mm-mm. No. But nobody ever questioned Keith Urban's country music credentials.
Or like there's like one girl, I can't think of her name offhand, but she's from like Indiana and has a Midwestern accent, you know?
Right.
But,
yeah, it's funny to listen to those songs and think that anybody could listen to the songs on her album and say it's not country. It's just like it's just racist.
Exactly.
There's like no other way around it. I mean, it's such a unapologetically country album from front to finish.
Right. And if you just, I mean, like when people say that kind of stuff, if you just interchange country with white, then you can't sing that. You're not white. You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's
what they really mean.
It's integrated into the whole industry, you know. It's a bummer.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm happy that, you know, like country queer and you know, a lot of the Americana industry is trying to change that, but getting it changed in the mainstream country is going to be a huge overhaul task.
Yeah, we got people on the ground. My friend Holly started a website called Black Opry that's doing the same thing Country Queer has been doing for queer voices for Black country artists, and I think she's getting a good legway with her launch. And you know, Reese Palmer's got the Color Me Country show on Apple Music, and I think that's been a huge push. Andrea and Martina, the writers on Twitter, who are constantly taking everybody to task over not so subtle latent white supremacist takes on things. Yeah, I think there's a lot of forward movement, but you're right, it is really staunchly embedded.
Well, even here at the podcast, like, you know, I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I've had how many straight white males and on the podcast in a row, you know, and
right.
I am embarrassed to say, I think that Mercy Bell is the only non-white guest I've had so far, you know, and so I'm trying to branch out and you know, do better. But, you know, sometimes you just have to admit that too, you know, that like, I mean, there are a lot of white male artists in Americana, and it's, you know, you've got to do the work and reach out for the other people as well. So that's something that I'm trying to work on myself, because I see the you know, the issues that a lot of people are bringing up. Like, I see that I'm a part of the problem, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think a lot more of us need to recognize that and to do our best to show up, to do the actual work. And it is, I mean, I would say the majority of submissions I get are for white artists. I don't know. It is an act. I think there's something that tells you No, I'm not going to say it that way. I think for me, I have struggled with it in a bunch of arenas, like as somebody who has the sort of platform of country queer doing Buried Treasure, but also as somebody who, I hire band members to play with me at shows. And I hire white guys. I've got a couple of white women that play with me sometimes, but I hire my buds. It's kind of this thing where it's like, that makes it sound like I'm only friends with white people, but like the music scene, the music scene, especially when it comes to Americana, we've got a handful of people in town, people of color who are doing roots-ish music. But there aren't a lot. And, it's one of these situations where if I get a gig and the guarantee on that gig is like $200, like I'm not going to like go out of my way to like make sure that I have a black person in my band and be like, I can give you $30.
Right.
Like that's just as shitty. Like that's just as complainable. So like, I'm going to get my white dudes to show up and underpay them because they're my buds and they're fine taking a loss. And then when the big money gigs come in, I feel like I owe those white dudes who showed up when I wasn't making a lot of money. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like this weird fucking cycle. And I don't know what the answer is to it, but I do know that my feeling is always like, well, things have to happen organically, but the truth is I don't think that's what it is. I think at some point along the way, like you have to just say like, fuck it. Like I need this to change and I have to do uncomfortable things to be intentional about making a change,
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. I mean, I'm the same way. I've definitely hired, sometimes I've had like all female backing bands, but almost always white people.
Right.
So it's, and some of them were queer but yeah, like I guess the people of color part of hiring musicians is a little bit more, well, in Nashville, it's a little bit better. There's a lot more people of color doing country music. Cause I mean, why would you come to Nashville unless you're doing country music, or at least know how to play it? But
yeah, for sure.
So it's a little bit better, but I still, I mean, here I am in a city that does have more people of color doing country music, and I still have yet to hire someone. So, definitely at fault there.
I think we had a meeting last night and Holly was talking about from Black Opry about coming up with a strategy. Are you familiar with the, I'm really ignorant about a lot. It's I don't know where it originated. I know it as kind of a Twitter thing that was going around, but it's kind of just a pledge, like a country music pledge to make a more equitable scene, racially equitable. And I think they're trying to put together now some kind of calls to action rather than just like, because that pledge that was going around was just like, I will try to hire more Black people. I will try to boost the voice of Black artists, things like that. And I think that this is coming up with specific, like, these are artists that are releasing stuff that you could feature this month. These are people that are looking for gigs right now, more pointed, like, here's some practical application for that pledge you took.
Yeah.
rather than just like, I don't know.
Oh, that's great. That's a great idea. To so kind of make it even easier. Cause like a lot of us don't know where to start.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Well, and it's like, I'm in a situation right now where I'm assembling my band for this release show. And it's like I want to be intentional, but I also just like in general feel so much anxiety about just like playing with somebody that I don't really know or don't know if I'm going to gel with yet, So it's like, I know there are people in Nashville that you can get like you can find spreadsheets of like musicians who want to play and who are looking for gigs and who are like the top class of their instruments, But it doesn't do anything to tell you like, am I going to have fun with this person? You know, I had the guitar player in my band. I went and met with him and a bass player friend of ours the other night, and they were like, we got to play with this drummer, you know? And I love those guys so much, but it's just like, you know, there's a difference in, how do I say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm dogging on my friends? It's like, and straight white guys like experience of other people. And I think you're one of these straight white guys talking about. But the straight white guy experience of other people is based on the way that those people treat and interact with straight white guys.
Right.
And so it's like, it's so difficult when somebody tells me this is a good dude. I don't know what that means, because that means that they were a good dude to you, which is a very different set of circumstances than like my experience is going to be of them. And, you know, like my other, like my black friends and my queer friends who are also out, you know what I mean? They're going to have a different experience of this person too than you do.
That's a totally valid point. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times where, you know, someone who's not a straight white male has been like, this guy's an asshole or whatever. And you're like, what? Really? They're like awesome to me, you know?
Right.
So that's a totally valid point. And I think this leads into the other Twitter question that we got from Easy Haven 1. And she asks, maybe ask them why they still play country type of or adjacent music when historically a lot of the core audience would alienate them from living their truth.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's part of the hesitation to release this album, because I would say this is the first country album I've ever put out.
Yeah.
I think that everything else I've done has been like tangentially Americana. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is definitely like unapologetically a country album.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think there are two things that happened for me. The first thing is country music was what I listened to as a kid. I loved Joe D. Messina and Faith Hill and Trisha Yearwood. I loved Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks was my fucking hero as a kid. Like that was the stuff that I grew up on. You know, dad comes home from the machine shops, you know, smelling like oil, and there's like country music on the radio, and like that's
song. Yeah,
that's it. That's the roots of it. And then, you know, packing that on, I think on a personal level for me, I was always really drawn to tradition. You know, when I was in the Christian church, especially in my second pass at trying to participate in the faith, I was really into the idea that the faith practices were tied to some sort of tradition. Like I was connected to something bigger than myself. And I think that country music to me feels very similar to that. I feel like I'm participating in something that's like both ancestral, part of me and part of the world, in a really, I don't know. It's maybe it's a dumb answer.
No. I think I found out what your brand of country is. It's progressive country.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah,
maybe so. And that was always my vibe.
Boundaries.
Before with tradition, but I really like, you know, I think I found at some point that I was taking on so many attributes of like the artists in the different spheres that I was circling in. And when I got really heavily involved in allowing myself to enjoy country music again without like qualifying it, you know, the same with my accent. Like when I no longer felt like I was like, I don't know, admitting I was from like a poor redneck family by having an accent, or, you know, like that.
Yeah, I relate to that.
Like I know the right word to use here,
yeah.
but but also there's a different language that I know how to speak from my childhood, and in that language, this is the right way to say it.
Right.
It drives my wife crazy that my kid says, "Where's that box? What's got the," instead of "that has," and that's this like other language. Anyway, yeah, I think
it's like but you don't want to. It's heritage, and you don't want to like forsake your family heritage. Or whitewash it or whatever, in some ways. And that's a struggle I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
but that's a struggle that I've been dealing with because, I come from Tioga, Louisiana, and there, I mean, like I have to translate for my dad sometimes to other people because his accent's so thick. And like, I tried to take that away. And so then I struggle with like, do I like bring it back? Or is that inauthentic? Re-embracing my like twang.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing because you do feel like people look at you as more ignorant if you speak that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I think there are a lot of folks that are part of that. I mean, I think there are a lot of folks who left who are coming around to it too, to like, allowing themselves to kind of like drift back into it,
Yeah.
I think that's part of a greater thing that's happening, on a significant scale. Another thing that I would say, actually, is that and this is something I toy with on this album some, but I think that there are specific narratives that get centered so heavily in country music, and those are the narratives that made me feel like I didn't have a place in country music, and they made me feel divorced from my whole culture. I tried to find cultural identity in so many different weird and inappropriate spaces for me to try to occupy before, I just was like, oh, like I'm a redneck white kid. I was named Kyle at birth. That's just who I am. I punch drywall, I drink Mountain Dew. And
you hang out in the Walmart parking lot on a Friday night. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to play Toby Keith from my big truck in the Walmart parking lot because there's nowhere else to go. But yeah, I think that to take up space and to use this genre of music, which, I mean, I make it seem like I'm doing something more intentional than I'm doing, because a lot of this album is the way that it is because I was reckoning with my sexuality and gender, and I was listening to country music. So it kind of just fucking happened. You know what I mean? Like, This is just what I was listening to and absorbing. So of course that's what came out. But especially as it revolves around the Toby Keith song, there's a lot of that. Like, how can I take back that narrative in a way that leaves space, because North Carolina isn't all like, I mean, fuck, I remember being a kid and seeing the Klan gathered, downtown Charlotte. Like, I remember this. Like, how can I say that North Carolina isn't all Confederate flags and white guys trying to bang white girls in short shorts in their pickup trucks, but say it's also getting your tarot read in Asheville. It's also like wearing clothes of the gender you're not assigned with and experimenting with what that looks like and what it means for you. It's also all these other things, because people, especially, I'm going to sound like a fucking Trumper, but like, you got coastal elite kind of Democrat folks who look at Tennessee and say, like, they're a bunch of fucking rednecks. And it's like, okay, but Tennessee is full of black people and it's full of queer people, and we are Tennessee. Like, Tennessee doesn't get to be what you've decided it is based on the fact, there's whole fucking structures in place, man. They've got these pipelines where they funnel kids right out of school into the prison system, and then they get in the prison system and they relocate them into these like majority white conservative neighborhoods so that they count for the population, but they're not allowed to vote. And now all of a sudden, all the power is resting on like white conservative people, and the people who are here feel so fucking disenfranchised by all these systems that are so palpable that they largely don't vote. I mean, Tennessee is mostly like non-voters. I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, I think making that more part of the story, like making the story more about the voices that don't get centered here, and also, I don't know, just restructuring it so that the like cis white story isn't centered in everything, especially as it pertains to the South and in this music. And I think that's work that I'm trying to be intentional about at this point.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your voice and your album and your narrative. It really needs to be in country music. And thank you for being brave enough to share it, even though you were afraid to.
Oh, I'm probably not brave. I'm probably just dumb.
I'm cutting that out. Damn it. Do not say that. No, that's not true at all. I think that this album is great. I'm so glad that Zach shared it and that I listened. It's really good stuff. And kudos to you for doing the whole thing on your own.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for I've been really on the fence over whether or not I'm going to go somewhere else or do the next one myself, because I want to start working on it. And so this makes me feel more capable to just take it on. So,
well, Adeem, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. The new album, Cast Iron Pansexual, is out now, available on all streaming platforms. So make sure you check it out. And what is your website?
It's adeemtheartist.com.
So check out adeemtheartist.com. And they are also on Twitter at Adeem the Artist.
The one.
Well, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Will. I appreciate you.
Well, that's it for this episode of Americana Station Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for supporting. Make sure you check out Adeem's new record, Cast Iron Pansexual. Next up on the podcast, we will have Shay Martin Lovett, and we'll talk about his new record. We also have Tall Paul and Corby Lanker coming up, and some more to announce soon. Make sure you rate and review the podcast. Every star review, every typed out review helps greatly in getting the numbers up, getting it more seen. So I appreciate that. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Tell everyone you know about Americana Station Podcast. Working on some video content soon, so we'll get some of that stuff out here in the next weeks to come. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks with Shay Martin Lovett. I'm Will Payne Harrison. Thanks for listening.